Here we have an example of an absolute value equation where you have two absolute values and they're equal to each other. Well, the statements that we made at the beginning of this series said that if you have two absolute values equal to each other, here are the two possibilities that you have for your equations. Either the insides are exactly the same, so 3x plus 4 equals x minus 4, or the expressions inside will be opposites of each other. And the way that we show this is that we keep the first guy exactly the same, so 3x plus 4 equals the opposite of the other guy. So we're going to use negative, and this negative is going to apply to the whole group x minus 4. Please make sure you use those parentheses so that the negative does distribute and hit both of those. When you don't use parentheses, oftentimes mistakes are made. Alright, so we're going to solve each of these equations and see what we come up with. So here, you know me, you know that I like to have a positive coefficient for my x, so I'm going to move the x to the left. After I do that, I'm going to move my constants to the right, so subtract 4 on both sides. And I end up with 2x is equal to negative 8. Finish solving for x. And x equals negative 4. No problems there. Over here, I should first distribute that negative. So I get negative x and plus 4. Alright, I want to move my variables to the left, so I'm going to add x to both sides. And while I'm moving my variables to the left, I'm moving my constants back to the right by subtracting 4. This gives me the equation 4x equals, pay attention here, this is 4x is equal to 0. And so as I finish getting x by itself, we see that x is equal to 0. Now, we really shouldn't have any problems with either of these solutions working. So far, with these absolute value equations, once you get your answers, you box them. And it's really no big deal. But what if I didn't have absolute values on both of these? What if I had an absolute value equation, but I had x outside the absolute value? Let's see what that means for us. Okay? So let's take this equation, and I'm going to keep the absolute value on one part of it, so the absolute value of 3x plus 4. And let's say this is equal to x minus 4. Okay? Let's see what kind of solutions I get here. Well, if you work this out, you would still split this up to say that 3x plus 4 would have to equal x minus 4, or 3x plus 4 would have to equal the opposite of x minus 4. Now, notice that these are the same two equations that I just had above, so I already know what the answers are. I know that this one's going to give me x equals negative 4, and that this guy is going to give me x equals 0. Unfortunately, I can't just box both of these and go on with my life. I need to check, and the reason I need to check is because I have x that's running around outside of the absolute value. So let's take a moment and check these. So let's check x equals negative 4. If I plug that in here, the absolute value of 3 times negative 4 plus 4, does that equal negative 4 minus 4? Well, this is going to give me negative 12 plus 4 is negative 8. Are these equal? It looks like they might be. However, when I do the absolute value of negative 8, I get positive 8. And these guys are not equal. So x equals negative 4 is not going to be included. It's an extraneous solution. We've talked about these guys already. Well, what about x equals 0? surely he works out, right? I mean, you can't have them both not work out. Let's plug in 0. If I do 3 times 0 plus 4, the absolute value, does that equal 0 minus 4? If I work this out, that's going to give me the absolute value of 4. And does that equal negative 4? And you see that it doesn't work. This guy just doesn't work out. So neither one of them work. They're both extraneous. And if both of them are extraneous, that means, you guessed it, it means that there is no solution. So it's not just that one didn't work, they both didn't work out. Well, let's consider this next one. What if we're solving and I swap who gets the absolute value, and I keep this as 3x plus 4, and then I put absolute value on x minus 4, like that. Where you're going to find out that no matter how you do this, you still end up with the same two solutions. You would still end up with x is equal to negative 4 or x equals 0. And we still have to solve this. We still have to check. If I check x equals negative 4, if I plug in negative 4 here, it's the same stuff that I had up here, except now I'm going to have negative 8. And on the other side, it's going to be the absolute value of negative 8. And so negative 8 does not equal positive 8. So it means this guy is not going to work. If I plug in 0, I'm going to get the same numbers that I have here, except now the 4 doesn't have the absolute value, but the negative 4 will, because I'm swapping who has the absolute value. And now 4 equals positive 4. That works out. So that means I only have one solution here, and that's x equals 0. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap over to a graphing calculator online. Okay, there's this great graphing calculator, great place for you guys to check some things out. And that is Desmos.com. So let's go there right now. Alright, so here we are in Desmos. You can do graphing calculator or a scientific calculator, but you can also do graphing. And I like what you can do with graphing because you can do colors and pretty much type in here whatever you want to. Change this so you guys can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to type in my two equations. So we have the absolute value of 3x plus 4. So there's that V shape that I mentioned earlier. And the other guy was the absolute value of x minus 4. And you'll see that there's two solutions. What are the solutions? Well, that's when x equals negative 4 and x equals 0. And those are the same values that we came up with when we were doing it on the piece of paper, right? Now, the next thing I did is that I took off the absolute value. Now watch what happens when I take that off. By taking that off, you see that there is now no intersection here. These guys don't cross. So you can see with it on and with it off. So with the absolute value, there are two solutions, and without, there are no solutions to this. This is why we got to check. Just because we have answers doesn't mean they work. Always go back and check against the original equation. Now, that last scenario, I took the absolute value off of the left side. And when I take that off, you see that I lost that solution that was right here, but I was able to keep the solution here at x equals 0. So just one of those things I wanted you guys to see. Just kind of pay attention to that, and always make sure that you go back and you check your work in the original equation.